Kanye West, he's out now actually known as just Ye.
I didn't know that. Actually.
Yeah, he legally changed his name last year apparently to just Ye. So he held a surprise show at Paris Fashion Week last week on Monday for his brand Yeezy, and one of the items was a t-shirt that had the Pope on the front and then the words White Lives Matter on the back. And then he was later photographed alongside right-wing political commentator Candace Owens wearing the t-shirts. Naturally, that has sparked a huge amount of backlash and outrage. Many attendees of the show walked out when the t-shirts made their way down the catwalk. Others took to social media to condemn him. One of those that condemned his actions was Vogue editor and stylist Gabriella Carifa Johnson, who called his designs indefensible behaviour. Kanye then took it upon himself to send a barrage of personal abuse to Gabriella over Instagram, as well as anyone else pretty much that dared to call him out. The phrase White Lives Matter has been classified as a white supremacist phrase by the Anti-Defamation League, and the KKK coined the phrase in 2015 as a rebuttal to Black Lives Matter. In an interview with Fox News' Tucker Carlson on Thursday, Kanye defended the t-shirts and said, "They're looking for an explanation. As an artist, you don't have to give an explanation, but as a leader, you do. So the answer to why I wrote White Lives Matter on a shirt is they do. It's an obvious thing." Now, this isn't the first time that Kanye has said something controversial around race. In 2018, he said 400 years of slavery was a choice. He's denied the abolitionist Harriet Tubman actually freed slaves. He said that she just sold them to other white people. In March this year, he also was suspended from Instagram for 24 hours due to a racial slur against comedian and TV host Trevor Noah, and he has dubbed Black Lives Matter as a scam. Kanye has been publicly very open about his bipolar diagnosis and struggle with mental health over the years. While many are naturally condemning him, others are voicing concern about his mental health and describing his recent actions as evidence of him having another episode. But Curtis, you're not convinced that it is related to mental health?
I'm not going to say it's categorically not. I just think that, and I know it's not intentional, but it looks like when people say, oh, okay, Kanye West is now wearing a t-shirt with White Lives Matter on, it must be another episode of a mental health issue, right? To me, that sounds like, well, you can't, just because his opinion is crap, you can't then just automatically link to mental health. There are many black conservatives out there. Yes, he's obviously had a history of mental health issues. And I'm not saying he's not having one right now, but I just don't feel comfortable trying to diagnose him through the lens of the media. And at the end of the day, he's just a conservative, just an arsehole. So, because there are people out there saying that, oh, I feel so sorry for him because he's doing this and this is not right. But just, I mean, he wouldn't have any different values if he wasn't going through a mental health crisis. And I know that's not what you are saying, but I feel that there are a lot of people trying to diagnose through the lens of the media when he's just a conservative, he's just a bit of a dick.
And I get that. Like, obviously, like, he is a conservative, and I agree with that. He's been a very open, like, Trump supporter. And obviously you don't want to conflate the two things, you know, as being connected or related somehow. That, you know, having bipolar disorder is the reason why he says these things or thinks these things or has these conservative opinions, because clearly that's not it. Like, you can be a shitty person and also have a mental health issue, or you can be a shitty person or you can have a mental health issue and also just have a political opinion. But for me, where I think it is more connected to his bipolar diagnosis is more the way in which he is saying things and his behavior online. He's been very erratic. He's been posting like all hours of the day and night, clearly not sleeping. He's being paraded around social media and news outlets and Fox News and whatever as some sort of spokesperson for white conservatism and Republican voices. And it just concerns me that, like, no one is stepping in. I mean, he described at the start of the show, he described himself as it being an unmanageable moment or an unmanageable situation. He was unmanageable. And we know that Kanye famously like has a bit of a God complex, and maybe that does come from some of his bipolar diagnosis.
It probably does come from the fact that he is a wealthy, powerful, famous person, because people might not have that in them ultimately turn into that, because if you're someone who's world famous and you got screaming fans every day saying we love you, you're amazing, that's going to factor into that as well. So I think a lot of the egotistical, narcissistic side from Kanye West, he's just suffering from I'm a rich prick who's famous. There's a lot of that as well.
I suppose. And obviously, like, I don't want to sort of come across as me saying I think this is evidence of him going through another like episode as some sort of like justification or pardon for what he's saying, because what he is saying is damaging, and it is concerning. But like I said, the way in which he's portraying himself, and it was similar like when him and Kim announced their divorce, the way that he handled her dating Pete Davidson, and like just somebody needs to take the phone off of Kanye. They need to log him out of everything, and they need to...
Why don't you should be like our resident correspondence with like
pop culture
and the Kardashians, because I know when you bring it
I'm not a Kardashians fan.
I know you're not a Kardashians fan.
I don't watch the Kardashians,
a lot of this,
but...
it starts to go over my head a little bit when it comes to Kardashians and
but like, so for example, like
he's
doing it now with the backlash from the White Lives Matter t-shirts. He's posting screenshots of conversations with people who are disagreeing with him. He's bad mouthing people. He's being accused of bullying. Like with the Pete Davidson stuff, I can't really remember anything off the top of my head, but he was very publicly like insulting of him. He would badmouth Kim. Like, at the end of the day, like, he has 4 children with her. The oldest, North, like, she is old enough now to see things that he's saying. They're impressionable. They're of impressionable ages. Like, he has a moral obligation as a parent to be wary of what he's saying out in public, and the people around him should also have that same understanding to protect those kids and his image. Like, his reputation is just going down and down and down, further and further and further, and no one's like seemingly stepping in to help him.
I just want to reverse a little bit though, because the root of this conversation seems to be that this iteration of wearing this White Lives Matter t-shirt, many people are calling his mental health into question because of that. In terms of how you think, well, you seem to think that it might be a mental health episode because the evidence of the way he's behaving, sharing screenshots of people, stuff like that. I would say, but also, is that just not because he's an arsehole as well? Because...
Maybe.
And I'm not categorically saying this is one thing or the other. I just want to make sure that we don't look at people with bipolar disorder and immediately link them to toxic traits, because then we can say, and I know that's not what you're saying. Some people, and I don't mean it that way, but accidentally might lead into that idea that, well, a bipolar, like Kanye West is clearly going for an episode right now because he's sharing screenshots, he's being really mean to people. And it's like, so it must be an episode.
No,
it might just be because he's a dick.
But then it's also important then to recognise that mental health in general, and, you know, in this instance, bipolar disorder, affects everyone who has it in very different ways. Like, he has described his experience with having bipolar disorder and his experience of having an episode as him becoming extremely paranoid, feeling like everyone's turning against him, feeling almost like conspiracy theories like forming in his head of like the government planting chips. And even in that interview with Tucker Carlson, like, he talks about someone he calls them they. He was talking about Disney, and then he went off on a bit of a tangent. I don't know if it was in relation to Disney or like something else, a wider they presence, but like they are trying to kill us, like they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. And he was just very like incoherent, and obviously like that kind of reflects back to how he has described his experience of bipolar and how he experiences episodes. That's why for me, it's not necessarily him wearing the t-shirt or producing the t-shirt that's the issue. It's like, which obviously it is an issue, but like that's not why I'm saying him wearing that t-shirt is not why I'm saying I think he's having an episode. I think it's how he's handling the backlash and how he's responding to people, and the way in which he's saying things. Like he put something on his social media, I think it's now been deleted, but it said, there's no such thing as a private conversation. God is always listening, and the feds too, with a smiley face afterwards. And like, yeah, those kinds of points for me is evidential to the fact that I personally think he's going through. He needs some help.
You don't think the feds are listening to us right now?
I mean, it's kind of on YouTube, so like they could very easily watch it.
I doubt they will.
Well, probably not.
I want to circle back to the impact then of a black man wearing something brazenly racist.
Yeah.
How that's a detriment to the black community. Oh, because, I mean, it's not my view, but it's clearly obvious that conservatives will, and it's not offensive to say, but will use them as a token.
Yeah, kind of using him as a mouthpiece to further push their agenda.
Exactly, their conservative agenda.
Because they're like, oh, look, here's a black person that agrees with us. So clearly we're not being racist, and we're not being this, and we're not being that, because they agree with us. And that clearly is wrong, in terms of the fact that the majority of that group will disagree with what he is saying and what they're saying. And yeah, it's just another way of them to kind of push their own political agenda by saying, oh, look, we've got a black person who thinks the same as us. So clearly we're not that wrong.
And sorry to cut you off. I've seen a lot of people talk about Kanye.
Kanye's probably the easiest thing to call him.
Use him as a stick to BLM now. Saying, well, I donated to Black Lives Matter, but now it's a scam. Yeah. And showing their regret for that. That's quite worrying to me. Because this isn't people who are just like always opposed to BLM. You can expect what they're going to say. Yeah. But it's apparently people who've supported it in the past and given to it. It's not a scam. It's not this big organization. It is an organization, but it's a collection of people, right? It's not some sort of coordinated Marxist organization, which is funny because people throw that out. They don't even know what Marxist means or any of this crap. But it's very harmful. I don't know how you tackle it though, because when you try and fight back against it, it's like you're accused of people not having a diversity of opinion, which is important.
Yeah, or you get the freedom of speech, like conversations thrown at you. You know, like
well, I mean, he can wear what he wants.
Because people aren't agreeing with you, you're trying to censor them, kind of thing. And obviously, I mean, I guess it seems like what's the way to word it? It seems like when you see a minority conservative, it always confuses me because it does seem like they're going against their own interests. But obviously they're not going to necessarily see it like that. Do you know what I mean?
No,
because they have those opinions. But it's always for me frustrating. Yeah, and I'm a white woman. Like I don't know that I can necessarily.
It's objectively the truth to say that if you're a black conservative, right, the policies of conservatism
directly
go against the black community. Yeah. Right. And when leftists, I don't think even be leftists, broadly progressive people point that out, you're accused of racism from the right now. It's like, well, this is you leaning into identity politics. It doesn't matter what people's colour of the skin is, it's what they're saying, all that sort of stuff. But it is objectively true to say that there's a reason why majority of the black community aren't Republicans, aren't conservatives, because the conservative ideology and the policies hurt minority communities the most obviously it would be wrong to say you're a black person, you are not allowed to have conservative beliefs. That's ridiculous. But it's also a fact to simply point out that it's like a working class person becoming like a Tory prime minister and saying, right, I'm going to raise taxes on working class people and cut tax for the very richest, and say this guy is clearly going against working class people's interests. And they're like, well, no, but he's working class. So, but at the end of the day, look, he's conservative. He's always been conservative. He can wear what he likes. I think what annoys me is Candace Owens.
Wear what he
Candace
likes,
Owens.
But this is a dangerous message.
It's dangerous. Of course, it's a dangerous message. But Candace Owens, I think what annoys me is Candace Owens, who's also black conservative, is clearly hijacking on this as well. Yeah. Because maybe he is having a mental health episode. I don't want to try and work out whether he is or isn't, but maybe he is. Yeah. And that does show someone like people around him and Candace Owens is exploitative. Yeah. I personally don't think this is necessarily a mental health episode. I think he would have done it regardless. So if he is having a mental health episode, I think he still would do that. He's always been very controversial,
and he always, like you said, he is kind of an asshole. And he's very clearly a conservative, like Republican and whatever. And yeah, like I said earlier, I don't want to mix the two, like, you know, try to say that the only reason why he's saying these things is because of bipolar disorder. And that's clearly not it, because he's allowed to have his political opinions and that's fine. But clearly as a black man, he should understand the implications of wearing a T-shirt that says White Lives Matter. If it said All Lives Matter, I could maybe be like, okay, well, you know, still a bit controversial, but I get it, because I understand why people don't kind of like the message of Black Lives Matter, even though, you know, at like a surface level, you know, when you always get that All Lives Matter like rebuttal. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I could understand maybe if he wanted to go down that route, but as a black man wearing a T-shirt that says All Lives Matter, he surely cannot be so naive to understand the negative implications of that.
And I also think it's quite funny that a lot of conservatives are picking up on this, saying, "Oh, good for Kanye West, what a legend, great." I thought you were the All Lives Matter brigade, because when we say Black Lives Matter, it's like, well, no, All Lives Matter. Now Kanye West is wearing White Lives Matter. Conservatives should be saying, no, All Lives Matter, not White Lives Matter, which is why the All Lives Matter is actually quite racist, because if those that are pushing that narrative aren't actually caring about
because
all
if they really cared, if they really cared, then they would say, Kanye, actually, it should say All Lives Matter, not just White Lives Matter, because we didn't agree with Black Lives Matter, so we also shouldn't agree with White Lives Matter. It should be All Lives Matter. And actually, like you just have pointed out, they've gone, oh yeah, good for him, I agree. Which actually then, just shows their true kind of standpoint on it.